ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.
एतु सर्वाणि कर्माणि मयि सन्न्यस्य मत्पराः अनन्येनैव योगेन मां ध्यायन्त उपासते तेषामहं समुद्धर्ता मृत्युसंसारसागरात् भवामि न चिरात् पार्थ मय्यावेशितचेतसाम् मय्येव मन आधत्स्व मयि बुद्धिं निवेशय निवसिष्यसि मय्येव अथ ऊर्ध्वं न संशयः अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततः मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय अभ्यासेऽप्यसमर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि कुर्वन् सिद्धिमवाप्स्यसि अथैतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुं मद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यतात्मवान् श्रेयो हि ज्ञानमभ्यासात् ज्ञानात् ध्यानं विशिष्यते ध्यानात् कर्मफलत्यागः त्यागात् शान्तिरनन्तरम् अद्वेष्टा सर्वभूतानां मैत्रः करुण एव च निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः समदुःखसुखक्षमी सन्तुष्टः सततं योगी यथात्मा दृढनिश्चयः मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिः यो मद्भक्तः स मे प्रियः यस्मान्नोद्विजते लोकः लोकान्नोद्विजते च यः हर्षामर्षभयोद्वेगैः मुक्तो ह्यः स च मे प्रियः.
Clarification. I heard most don't take the verse Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya into context because they don't quote the line before this verse. What's the line before this verse and what does it mean? Is there any other question? Okay. This is not, we are not going to take into this text now. It's a separate textbook and some quotes will be given Amit. Some quotes will be given in the flow it is taken. Now, what is this text and what is the line before that and what is going to follow later, the entire context means we have to at least do 4 or 5 mantras in that text. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. It goes. The statement will go on. The quote will go on increasing. So what do we do is we take something we try to fit it into the context of what we are discussing now, instead of studying that quote per se. Like, for example, Nitya, Nitya Viveka Vicharam can be studied. Like Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya can be studied, can be quoted. Meaning, some statements we consider as formulas. Because we consider some statement as formulas, it has a flexibility of quoting very liberally. Supposing we will never quote the verses 8, 9, 10, 11 of chapter 12. We will never quote that at all in our regular conversations. Why? It's a very specific context. It cannot be taken out and explored. But then Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. These are all what we call as the sutras, the formulas, which can be adapted, fitted into the flow of discussion. Some need a flow, some need not need a flow. And whenever we study that book, we will take it up in detail. Because this is something totally out of that statement can be explained, which we have done any number of times. I'm not explaining that statement. We have done that any number of times. Is okay, Amit? Yeah. In verses 6 and 7 that we studied, Bhakti Yoga, chapter 12. In verse 6 and 7, he covered the entire spiritual range of practices, whatever he said, 6 and 7 combined. Ideally, the understanding is everybody has done all that and come. But then Krishna understands that it is not the case. Therefore, what he does, he knows the gradations of the seekers. The seekers can be categorized into broad categories. When we say broad categories, means it's a broad spectrum that we are discussing. We are not taking into minute distinctions, because minute distinctions cannot be discussed in a classroom. It is like between, in mathematics, 1, 2, 3, 4 we study. And then when we go to higher classes, between 1 and 2 itself, there is, in the elementary classes, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you go to the higher classes, between 1 and 2 itself, there is a spectrum, isn't it? 1.01, 1.02, 1.03, it goes on like that. Therefore, between levels, between two stages, there may be so many gradations. But we cannot discuss, he is not discussing that. He is giving us the broad categories. What are the broad categories? The first category he spoke about in verse number 8. What is the first category he spoke about in verse number 8? He said, Mayi eva mana adastva, mayi buddhim niveshaya, etc. Which we studied in detail. What did that verse say? You have done the spiritual practices so well that the mind and intellect are both so much placed in the divine that it doesn't get distracted into anything else. The mind is on the self, the intellect is on the self. No distraction into anything else. When we say no distraction means half an hour, 1 hour, 1 day, 2 days. It's constant. Nothing else other than that matters to that person in verse number 8. Then he said, which is what we are studying, verse number 9. If you are unable to think of me, live in me 24/7, 365 days like that, what do? he gives another practice. What is the practice? Abhyasa yoga, which is what we are studying in verse number 9. And then later on, he is going to say, even if you are not able to practice abhyasa, do something else. And then later on, he is going to say, even if you are not able to do that, do something else. And then in verse number 11, he will stop. He says, if he can't do verse number 11 also, there's no verse number 12 there. He says, if you can't do verse number 11 also, it's like saying, okay, don't worry. One point of time you will, at some point in time, you will come back. The difficulty that Arjuna had, which everybody has, is how to keep remembering the divine most constantly. That's the challenge. If you don't remember the divine, what are you remembering? I have said all this any number of times. The challenge of the person, the challenge that Krishna is trying to address, which Arjuna has beautifully asked is, how to remember the divine all the time. Ananya Chinta. How do I remember the divine all the time is the challenge. In order to remember the divine all the time, you must have a lot of affinity, because remembrance requires, when will you remember? Only when you have an affinity, you can remember. And how will affinity develop? How will affinity develop? Just by thinking about it once in a week for 5 minutes, you develop affinity. Once in a month, you think for 1 minute, you will develop affinity. How will you develop affinity? Affinity will develop when you constantly associate. Affinity will develop only when you constantly associate. Now, when you constantly, how would you constantly associate? It means you need a specific lifestyle. This is how it goes sequentially. If you have a specific lifestyle, that lifestyle itself will help you to remember. That lifestyle will help you to remember the divine. And by that remembrance of the divine, by and by, divine becomes more and more and more important in your life. A time will come where other than the divine, nothing matters. And then you will be constantly thinking about the divine liberation. This is how it goes. The broad categories is Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, Karma Yogena Yoginam. That broad category we have seen in chapter 3. Here, that Sankhyanam belongs to the verse number 8. They are the highest category of people, where they have done all this already. What is the assumption there? You don't practice Sankhya, you don't practice it. You have lived a specific lifestyle of karma bhakti. By living that specific lifestyle of karma bhakti, you have exhausted so many things, so that your mind by itself is not getting distracted anywhere. You are able to remember the divine. That is called Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam. Now you can't do that. It is simple. It is highly unreasonable and irrational to expect people to do that. It means what? You need to break it down. And when you break it down, on what basis you break it down? You have to break it down. On what basis you will break it down? You break it down based on the basis of how much your mind is wandering. You break it down. The spiritual practices is always broken down based on how much your mind is wandering. Number 2, the spiritual practices are broken down based on how much of emotional fluctuations you are going through. One is the wandering mind. Second is the emotional fluctuations. The wandering mind and emotional fluctuations implies lack of maturity. Therefore, you need a specific disciplines, you need specific lifestyle to develop that so that you can come to the highest level. Now, the scriptures following the Krishna, following the Upanishad tradition, they always talk about the highest category first. Why they do that, God only knows. That's how the style of the scriptures is. So they start with the highest. Now, it is obvious that the highest is not possible. You break it down. When you break it down, how would you break it down? What is the challenge? Why are we trying to break it down? If you miss that point, you will get confused completely. Why are we trying to break it down? Because you are not able to remember the divine. Number two, you have other priorities. You have other priorities. Yeah, other priorities, sir. That is far more important than this, other priorities. Third, fluctuations, anger, kamayesha, krodhayesha, rajoguna samudbhava, all that we have seen already. Another, the anger and all the other emotional, disturbances, fear, instinct, all that comes. When all these emotional fluctuations are there, what divine the person can remember? That's why remembrance of divine is very frustrating. You take Vedanta, spiritual practice seriously, you will end up frustrated. You take it as a time pass, good entertainment, there's no problem. Every few weeks, we keep giving the disclaimers. You take it as a very good time pass, having heard of one or two good things I have heard, and apply it here and there. I'm okay, sir. You are all right. If you take it seriously, you'll get extremely frustrated. Why extreme frustration? Because you need to pluck the mind from somewhere and plant it elsewhere. And how much ever you pluck it, it will keep going back. It keeps going back. It keeps going back. When it keeps going back, you get frustrated. Yeah, you get frustrated. Frustrated on whom? Frustrated on everybody around you. That's why if there is a puja in the, have you ever observed, normal days, less fight in the house. Festival days, more fight. Have you ever observed that? Normal days, people are less tensed. On festival days, more tension. You feel like almost saying, stop the prayer, stop the worshipping only. Why? Why? Why the frustration? Why there is always a frustration? The frustration is because you are not allowed to do in the way that you feel like doing. It has to be done in a, you are made to obey a, when you are made to obey a law, your mind will not cooperate, it will get frustrated. Are you able to follow the sequence? You will get frustrated. Imagine, anyway, attitude only matters. You do the way that supposing the freedom is given, you do the way you feel like doing. What's happening there? You are not remembering the divine. You live as you don't remember the divine. By remembering the divine, you are becoming more and more egoistic only. Why? Because even the divine, you will not follow the law. You will do according to, even there, you will do according to what you like. Therefore, progressive steps, therefore it keeps breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down. How did he break it down in verse number 9? If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, if you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, seek to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga. This is where we were studying currently. Seek to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga. Now the question is, what is this? What is this Abhyasa? What does this Abhyasa means? What is this Abhyasa? What does this Abhyasa means? In the highly evolved state, Brahman, God is seen as Nirguna. You are able to connect with God as consciousness, enlivener, Sakshi, petrol, and all that you are able to, all this you are able to identify with divine as that which is very motivating, inspiring. Roma Harshasya Jayate. You hear the word Sakshi, you hear the word Brahman, you hear the word Chaitanyam. You get so motivated, you get so inspired. This is the highest. Now all these words about God doesn't create any association, correct? It doesn't create any association. Chaitanyam, what would you do with Chaitanyam? Consciousness. What would you do with Sakshi? And then you say Sakshi Chaitanya. What is Sakshi Chaitanya? Enlivening everything without participating in anything. Enlivening everything without participating in anything. That is God, and that is you. It doesn't really help. Therefore, what he does, he broke down the very concept of God. How did he break down the very idea of God from Nirguna to Saguna? Now, when he breaking down Nirguna to Saguna, the Saguna itself has grades. What are the grades? Vishwarupa is one grade. Ishtadevata is another grade. Why he has to break it down like that? Because of our inability to relate with God. Because of our difficulty to relate with Nirguna, you have to break it down to Saguna. And when you break it down to Saguna, again, highest to the lowest. What is the highest? Vishwarupa is the highest. How do we say Vishwarupa is the highest? There is this world. We have seen all that already. There is this world. And what is this world? God created this world. How did God create this world? How did God create this world? At least answer you must give. How much of brainwashing hypnotism is done?
By becoming and supporting.
How did God create the world? Divya. God created the world by becoming the world. Correct. God created the world by becoming the world. If God has created the world by becoming the world, your hatred and frustration is towards whom? If you are angry at somebody, if you are cursing somebody, you are frustrated with somebody, you want to murder somebody, whom are you murdering? Whom are you frustrated with? Whom are you shouting at? God. Correct? That is breaking it down. Saguna. From Nirguna, we have come one step down. Are you able to follow the steps? Saguna it is. This will not practically work for a lot of people. Why? Because we all have a list. Isn't it? Everybody has a list. What is the list that everybody has? What is the list that everybody has? Vijay Rangan. Except these, rest are all God. We all have a list. Except that 2-3 people, sir, rest are all God. Actually, sir, human beings can't be seen as God only. I'm comfortable seeing trees and animals as God. But human beings I can't see as God. It means Vishwarupa Upasana is not. It means Vishwarupa Upasana is not possible for you. Are you able to follow? Because we have a genuine list of wicked people. Therefore, my hatred is legitimate. Your hatred will have a legitimacy. No. What from where your hatred gets a legitimacy? From wicked, vicious, corrupt people, sir. How can they be God? How can they be God? So Nirguna is gone already. Vishwarupa is gone. Vishwarupa is also gone. Why? Because when he spoke about Nirguna, we said Sakshi Chaitanyam, Brahma Satyam, Jagan, all that is not. That went out of syllabus. And then he said, okay, at least Vishwarupa see. That also has gone out now. Why? Because in Vishwarupa, the entire creation is seen as God. How do you see the entire creation as God? Because it is God that has become the world, just as the gold has become the ornament. Elsewhere, he says, Acharya used to beautifully say, world darshan is God darshan, he will say. World darshan is God darshan. Just as ornament darshan is gold darshan. Pot darshan is clay darshan. Similarly, world darshan is God darshan. No. It is not possible. Why? Because we all have a list. I'm repeating again. We have a list. Now Krishna breaks it down for them. Okay, you people have a list to know. Okay, don't worry about anything now. It's not that you are disqualified. From Vishwarupa, come to Ekarupa. Not Vibhuti. Not Vibhuti. Vibhuti and Vishwarupa goes together. From Saguna, from Nirguna, we come to Saguna. In the Saguna, from Vishwarupa, we come to Ekarupa. Even though we have talked about Aneka Rupa in between. Even though we have spoken about Aneka Rupa in between. What is Aneka Rupa? Vibhuti Yoga chapter. All the good things in the world is me. See that. You can't do that. Are you able to follow? A person cannot do that. Why? Okay. Vishwarupa Darshana is not possible. Vibhuti Yoga is also is not possible. How? What should you do in Vibhuti Yoga? All the good things in life should be seen as God. Correct? What are all the good things that you have? What are all the good things that you have that you should see as God? What are all the good things that you have that you should see as God? He gave an examples. In chapter 10, he gave examples. Rama, Shastra, Bradamrataha, amongst the birds I am this, amongst the mountains I am this. These are all examples, meaning the best. Now, what are all the best? What, according to you, what is the best? Except me, nothing else. Yeah. Except me, there's nothing best around. Everything around me is full of water. Yeah. Everything around me is full of holes and water. ஒன்னும் சரியில்லை, isn't it? எல்லாம் I forgot that word. What does that man said? He said, in my house full of old, instead of saying full of old people, he said full of all what else he said. What is the goodness that you have? Find out. You have some goodness, some good things that you have. That is very difficult to remember. Why? Because you feel you have earned it, you have deserved it. You don't see it as prasada buddhi. That's why Vishwarupa and Vibhuti and all is together almost. For example, health. For example, let us say health. When disease comes, it is irritating, frustrating, God will be blamed. When you are healthy, I'm so healthy now, let me do more chanting. I'm so healthy now, let me do some good thing. Now, when the good thing comes, you don't remember the divine. The same formula applies. When the good thing comes, you cannot remember the divine because you feel you have. Therefore, what happens from Vishwarupa? The next step is Ishtadevata. From Vishwarupa, you come to Ishtadevata. What is Ishtadevata means? Learn to fix your mind on God in a form first. Learn to fix your mind on God in a form. That also is very difficult. That is why we have so many gods for everything. You go to the puja room, you will see. You go to the puja room, you will see 25 gods. Even Ishtadev, we can't even just keep one god. We need to have 25 gods. Why? Because that much is required. So now what happens? By continuously associating with that Ishtadevata, you will develop an affinity to divine. And then by developing that affinity to divine, you will gather in maturity. What is the maturity? Rather than seeing God in that single form, you mature into Vishwarupa, and then from Vishwarupa, you mature into Arupa. Are you able to follow the sequence? From Ishtadevata, you go to Vishwarupa. In Vishwarupa, Vibhuti Yoga gets added up there. So from Ekarupa, you go to Vishwarupa. In order to do that, you must have a lot of affinity towards a God. Some God you have to have. If a person can't do that also, there is another step he is giving. If a person can't do that also, there are steps that he is giving. If you are not able to do the Vishwarupa, come to Ekarupa. Now Ekarupa is called? That Ekarupa is called Ishtadevata. Why that Ekarupa is called Ishtadevata? Because your mind has an affinity. Remember what we started by saying. In order to remember, you must have an affinity. In order to remember, you must have an affinity. By continuously associating, your affinity increases. And how would you associate with anything? How would you associate with anything? Mentally and physically. Mentally, verbally, physically. Association happens through mental, verbal, and physical. Therefore, lot of practices, lot of puja, rituals, etc. is developed towards a deity now. Amit, are you able to follow till now? Lot of rituals and puja and everything is developed around that Ishtadevata. But sir, that is all very superstition. I don't belong to that. I don't belong to this category of idol worshipping and all, sir. I belong to the, I don't know what category we belong to. You follow what I'm saying? How it goes step by step? So, so, so what he's saying is, if you can't do Vishwarupa, you need to come to, yeah. Obviously, you should not get stuck to that Ishtadevata. From Ishtadevata, you must graduate to Vishwarupa. From Vishwarupa, you must go to that. Now I am going into the verse. Abhyasa yogaha, he's saying. Yes.
I have got two questions. First one is, in verse 8, you are saying it's highest. Highest means merger. Are you saying merger? Is that highest?
Merger means self-realized. Verse number 8 is the first sadhana, the highest sadhana. Nowhere in this chapter we are talking about self-realization. We are talking about the Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam. I said it. The highest person who has evolved into the highest level of spiritual maturity, whatever be it, whoever it is. It is not about self-realized. It is not about self-realized person. He is doing a sadhana.
So it is beyond Vishwarupa.
It is above Vishwarupa, which is what I said already. What did I say? What will be the remembrance of God that will happen there? How will you remember God there? I used a few words. Sakshi Chaitanyam, Enlivener, Tattvamasi, Brahman, Prajnanam, all these words itself will help you to remember the divine. Now, those words are not triggering anything. It means we come down from 8 to 9. We come from 8 to 9. It is one step, not below. Because we are not evolved to that height, he is helping us to come down to our level. It's not lower. Below doesn't mean lower, inferior. I am not able to do that. Whose fault it is? Therefore, I need to come down to my level. Out of foolishness, I went and sat in the PhD classroom. Now the teacher is saying, out of foolishness, you came and sat in the PhD classroom. Now you go back to, now you see whether you can fit in the master's classroom. You go to the master's classroom. Even then you feel you will not fit in. Then you'll go to bachelor's classroom. Even then you don't fit in. Why? Because you didn't do the school properly. It's not inferior steps. It's not below. It means what? Out of greed, you overstep in your spiritual. Out of greed, everybody oversteps. Sheer greed it is. You hear a little bit here and there, everybody gets so greedy and they want to go. Now what he is saying, just because out of greed you come and sit here, transformation is not going to happen. Therefore what he is saying, from Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, come to Karma Yogena Yoginam. What is that Karma Yogena Yoginam? We are discussing that. You follow? Therefore, verse number 8 is not about self-realized person. He is also a spiritual practitioner, whoever it is. Next one.
Before Ishtadevata, you said we have a lot of photos at home. And in Vibhuti Yoga also, we worship everything. So is there a difference between the lot of photos worshipping in Vibhuti Yoga? Are they?
The clarification is there is lot of idols and pictures versus Vibhuti Yoga. Are they one and the same or different?
There's many in Vibhuti, Aneka Rupa, and here also a lot of gods.
Vibhuti Yoga is different. I never used Vibhuti Yoga at all. I never brought in Vibhuti Yoga at all into the discussion. I'm always going from Vishwarupa to Ekarupa. Vibhuti is not at all brought in. I never brought in Vibhuti Yoga at all. You are unnecessarily bringing it in here. It is totally out of context here. Still, to explain the clarification, what is Vibhuti Yoga? What is Vibhuti Yoga? What is the fundamental formula of Vibhuti Yoga, which I said in chapter 10? The fundamental formula of Vibhuti Yoga, chapter 10, is whatever is there you are seeing. In the Ishtadevata, you are creating something. There is a difference. You see the tree. You don't create the tree. You don't create the mountain. You don't create the rivers. Whatever is there already, you are seeing. You are not able to do that. Are you able to follow the difference? Therefore, what you do, we come to Ishtadevata. Ishtadevata means a god. God with a form, Kalyana Guna, attributes, etc. It's a separate step altogether. Saguna, in Saguna, Vishwarupa, from Vishwarupa, you come to Ekarupa. Even Ekarupa we cannot do because even Ekarupa we cannot do. Why? Because the same wandering mind is continuing even here. That's why we are not able to have one Ishtadevata and remember that Ishtadevata and do the prayer and whatever has to be done there. We are not able to do that. Why we are not able to do that? Verse number 10 is going to say that. Because Upasana requires a Sattva Guna. You can't do Upasana because you don't have the Sattva Guna. What does Upasana means? Upasana means konja nera ukkaranu physically. Upasana means you sit. You cannot sit. You want to keep running around. That's what he's going to talk about in verse number next. Therefore, the people who cannot do that, in order to make them sit, so many forms are given. There is one Lakshmi, there is one Ganesha, there is one Saraswati, there is one Rama, there is one Krishna, there is this. Why all this is given? Why all this is given? Because when you look at the world for Vibhuti Yoga and Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, you are able to see something in the world as divine. In Ishtadevata Upasana, nothing in the world is divine. That's the fall. Sorry, it's not a fall. That's lack of maturity. Are you able to follow? I don't know. I am thinking I am talking sense. I don't know how it is sounding. If it is absolute blabbering, Divya. Are you able to follow? In Vibhuti Yoga and Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, something is different there. What is it different there? In the world, something in the world will look divine. In Ishtadevata Upasana, we are not able to do that. Why? Because nothing in the world looks divine. You see the newspaper, is there anything that looks divine? Is there anything that looks divine? Nothing looks divine. You see the water, does it look divine? You see anything, nothing looks divine. Therefore, what do we do there? Vibhuti Yoga is also not. According to Krishna, not according to Krishna, sorry, we are doing Bhagavad Gita. Upanishads will not have a conversation with the Saguna people and all. He says either you come to Nirguna or go somewhere, prepare and come back, I'll teach you. Yeah. You can't go to the highest classical musician singer and ask to learn him version, no? Sapa, Sala, he will not teach. He'll say, go there, learn and come back. Are you able to follow the difference? Therefore, from Vishwarupa, we come straight to where? Ekarupa, Ishtadevata. That Ekarupa, what we called as Ekarupa, I am replacing that word as Ishtadevata. Why? Because you need some God, some form which is of your affinity to start with. That is why we say, where do you start love? You are supposed to love the neighbor. You are supposed to love the neighbor, you are supposed to love the country, etc. But where do you start? Home. When I can't even love at home, what love I can do through the neighbor, what love I can do elsewhere? Are you able to follow? They say charity begins at home. If I can't be charitable at home, how can I be charitable outside? Now Upanishadic teachers are very good because they don't break it down like this. We can find very comfortable with them. When you come to a teacher like Krishna, he breaks it down and shows the mirror in front of us so much that we will not want to see our image in that mirror. You follow? What is Ishtadevata now? Have a God and worship, have a God, and develop affinity towards that God first. Develop a bond towards a God first. What is developing bond towards God means? What is developing bond towards God means? What is bond? Bondage illa, affinity, a relationship. What does that mean? You develop relationship because of what? You develop relationship because of what? We all need relationships because of what? Security. So you start finding security in that God first. We develop relationships because of security. We want security. We want something like that. Are you able to follow? Therefore, Ishtadevata comes where? Ekarupa. That's what he calls as Abhyasa Yoga in verse number 9. Practice that. Practice. Continuously practice. How would you practice that? That's where all the Puranic stories comes. They give the stories about God. And by hearing the stories about God, you develop an affinity towards that God. And you know that God is powerful. And that powerful God will be able to. And that powerful God is your protector. What happens? You have matured from looking at the world for protection. World is meant to serve. Protection comes from God. World is meant not to ridicule. World is not meant to dismiss. World is meant to serve. Protection and security comes from God. Are you able to follow?
So are you categorizing Aneka Rupa and Vishwarupa in one now?
I said, again I'm repeating. What is said in those chapters, I'm not using those words. Follow the words that is used in this chapter. In this chapter, what are the words that I'm using? Vishwarupa, Ishtadevata. Follow that. Don't keep comparing. What is said as Aneka Rupa there? Is it meant as Ishtadevata here? What is meant as Vibhuti there? Did it mean here like that? Don't keep connecting it like that. Use the words that is used. Use the words that is being used in this chapter. You follow? Don't keep connecting it like that. If you keep connecting it like that, you cannot understand anything. Follow the words that is used in every chapter. One day when we finish all the 18 chapters, it will click. Everything will get connected. You follow? Okay. Yes.
So I
Yeah.
just want to
Yes.
clarify my understanding. So I understand that if you're not at level 5, you go to level 6, you go to level 7. But are level 6 and 7 preconditions to be at level 5? So which means that if someone is at level 5, then they are very good at level 6 and 7 already, which is why they are at level 5.
Yes. Correct. If a person is able to do Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, if a person is able to do Vishwarupa Yoga, Vishwarupa Upasana, if a person is able to do Vishwarupa Upasana, it means that person is very good and mastered and matured Ishtadevata. Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Is it okay? If you are not able to see divine or any goodness in the world, you are not able to see any goodness in the world. Okay. Naturally, what comes to you when you look at the world? You have to make a lot of effort to see goodness, or does world appears good naturally to you? You have to make a lot of effort. We have to make a lot of effort to see goodness in the world. Because you open the eyes, you see only negatives, isn't it? You see negativity. And the moment you start associating with anybody closely, you start hating that person more. We have said it any number of times. Very easy to serve the stranger on the roadside. Very difficult to serve the one at home. Very easy to be compassionate to the person somewhere, but very difficult to be compassionate to the one who is at home. Isn't it? We have seen that. It means we need to have a specific lifestyle of associating with the divine. What is that specific association with the divine we want? Abhyasa Yoga. That's what we are studying now. Verse number 9. Abhyasa Yoga. Abhyasa here means what? Abhyasa means practicing. Now, what do you practice? What are you practicing here? Remembering the mind, you are able to fix it on a one for a predetermined period. That is called abhyasa. Again, you are able to place your mind on a finite single object for a predetermined time. That is called abhyasa. For you to do that, the mind must see that object as great, beautiful, attractive, all-powerful. Correct? For mind to be there, you should be able to see that finite object as beautiful, powerful, attractive, protector. All this is required. Therefore, why it is called abhyasa is because temporarily to withdraw from all worldly relationships for that period of time is very difficult. Even in that period of time, we do multitasking. Abhyasa is opposite of multitasking. You don't do multitasking. You do only one thing. But sir, if I don't do multitasking, who will do the other things? Isn't it? That's our problem. What does multitasking means? What is multitasking means? Okay, understand this. As I am talking, I attend a phone call. As I am talking, I'll attend a phone call. As I am talking, I will say, do something else and come back. Do something else and come back. How does it look? As a speaker, if I do that, how does it look? As an audience, you do everything. It doesn't matter. As a speaker, if I do, how does it look? It shows what? As a speaker, if I do that, it shows what? What does it show? It shows lack of sanctity. It shows lack of sanctity. Yeah, there's no value to this. Same thing you should do when you sit with Abhyasa Yoga, Eka Rupa Upasana. Ishtadevata Upasana, you must sit like that for a predetermined time. Switch off everything for that, and even if we can do that for 2 minutes, the definition of Abhyasa is Punah Punaha Stapanam. Punah Punaha Stapanam is the definition of Abhyasa. Punah Punaha Stapanam means again and again and again you try to place it there. It will wander, you place it back. It will wander, you place it back. Punaha Punaha, again and again. By this continuous practice, abhyasa, that abhyasa will turn into yoga. Are you able to follow? The abhyasa will turn into yoga. What is abhyasa turning into yoga? It will not wander anymore. That becomes the maturity in Ishtadevata. That's where you find all the devotees of Ishtadevata sees that God everywhere. If you have Ishtadevata as Rama, you see Rama everywhere, which is Vishwarupa Darshana. You see Rama everywhere. You see Krishna everywhere. You see Christ, whatever be your Ishtadevata, you see that. The good is also Rama, the bad is also Rama. The good is Krishna, the bad is Krishna. The saint is Krishna, the terrorist is also Krishna. It means through Ishtadevata, you have gotten maturity into, from Ishtadevata, you have gotten maturity into what now? Vishwarupa. What is the indication of your maturity? That we have seen already. What is the indication of maturity? Emotional fluctuations. We have seen that already. The emotional fluctuations are the indicators of maturity. Now, what we see as six indicators from verse 13 to 20 is going to give 35 indicators. We gave only 6 indicators. What are the 6 indicators? Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya, Bhaya, Dvesha. The indicators of the 6. Now, in verse 13 to 20, he's going to give 35 indicators. As I said in the last class, there is a limitation in that. There is a problem in that. What is a problem in Ishtadevata Upasana? You can become fanatic. You can become fanatic. That possibility is there. How to avoid the fanaticism? The Shravana Manana helps you. That's where the Swadhyaya, the Shravana Manana helps you from getting into this fanaticism. Otherwise, there is a difficulty. What is the difficulty? You will turn very in that form that you, in that Ekarupa, which is called Alambana, technically, it has to be beautiful, attractive. It's very important. That's why all the Puranic stories will talk about the beauty first. It will talk about the beauty. The mind can focus only when it has when it is attractive, meaningful. Then only the mind can focus. Why it is called Ishtadevata? It is called Ishtadevata because what looks beautiful in your eyes may not look beautiful in the eyes of the others. That is why we have Ishtadevata as individual freedom. Why this Ishtadevata? It's a very important reason for having Ishtadevata. What is the reason for having Ishtadevata? What is beautiful in your eyes may not be beautiful in the eyes of others. Have you ever observed that? Therefore, the God that looks beautiful in your eyes may not be beautiful in the eyes of others. Now, one cannot impose the beauty and torture the other to see the beauty. What I see as beautiful, I see. Now, I cannot impose and torture the person next to me and say, you also see the same beauty. You also see the same beauty. It is not possible. Having understood this basic nature of the mind, the sages in the Vedic culture, in Vedanta, what they have done? They have given the freedom of Ishtadevata, and so many Puranic stories have been given about the deities. So many things has been done so that the mind can get, the mind can develop an affinity. Are you able to follow why it is necessary? When that becomes attractive, the attractions to the lower drops. How to make the mind drop the attraction to the lower? You have to make the higher attractive. How do you make the higher attractive? That is why we say have a Ishtadevata. But sir, if can I worship Guru, sir? Guru and all, leave it behind. Don't waste your time with, don't waste time with the Gurus. Why? Because Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam alone Guru becomes so great. Till the time it is Devata Upasana only, not Guru Upasana. Again, Guru Upasana is very important. At what stage? Guru Upasana becomes very important only at the Sankhya stage. Why Guru Upasana is only important at that Sankhya stage? Because you have started, you have gotten an intellectual maturity, you have gotten a spiritual maturity already. Therefore, you can worship a person as God. Till that time, very difficult. Why? Because you start worshipping the Guru also behaves exactly like you, isn't it? If you have preferences, looks like he also has preferences. If you have likes and dislikes, looks like the Guru also has likes and dislikes. If you think you make mistakes, looks like he also makes mistakes. Therefore, this infatuated way of Guru worship and all will never be spoken in the Ishtadeva, in the initial stages of spiritual practices. That's why we never spoke about the Guru Upasana and all that here. We are only talking about Vishwarupa, Ekarupa, Ishtadevata only we are talking. Nowhere does Guru come in. There nowhere you should bring Guru. Don't do that. There is a saying, no. Nadi Moolam, Rishi Moolam should not be. The origin should not be seen. The past should not be seen. If you see the past, what goes out? All the fault you will start seeing. That person is not faulty, but your mind is trained to look into the fault. Are you able to follow? Again, I repeat. Your mind is trained to look into the fault. Why the mind is trained to look into the fault? Because it is impossible for the mind to conceive of somebody can be superior to me in all aspects. It's impossible for the mind to accept that. Okay, that person may be superior in one skill. Another person may be superior in another skill, but impossible to accept a being as something superior. Therefore, the Vedas, the Vedanta will never talk about Guru worship and Guru Upasana. It will always talk about a Devata. And that Devata has to be flawless. And Devata has to be flawless. And the Devata has to be perfect. Because Why that Devata has to be flawless, perfect? Because that Devata is your hero. And hero cannot be with, a hero cannot be with fault. Yeah. A hero cannot be with fault. Or his fault is also not false. Impossible it is when it comes to, therefore, learn to have a Ishta, learn to have an Ishta Devata. And when you have an Ishta Devata, Upasana is required. Mind will keep jumping. Let the mind jump as many times it wants to jump, let it jump. Because we are not talking about meditation here, we're talking about Abhyasa here. Abhyasa means it is implied, it is understood what? It will jump. Bring it back. Punaha, punaha. Punaha, punaha. Again and again and again you have to bring it back. Remember verse number 26, chapter 6, he said, Yato yato nischarati. Manas chanchalam astiram. Yato yato nischarati. Verse number 26, chapter 6, he said it already very clearly. It will keep going. It will keep going. Bring it back. Bring it back, he said. It will keep going. Bring it back. It will keep going. Bring it back. In Abhyasa, mind will go. You will bring it back. Yoga means you have mastered practice. Remember, the Sanskrit word yoga means you have mastered practicing. That's why we say the mind does not go, it remains in Ishtadevata, it doesn't get distracted at all. It means what? If it is not getting distracted, it means that person has done lot of upasana for, the person has done lot of these practices for a long period of time. You need to see this. But the mind is trained to find fault. The mind is trained to find fault. Sir, my weakness is, sir, people say that. What is your strength? I can spot mistakes so fastly, sir. I always ask whose mistakes? Whose mistakes you are able to spot very easily? Obviously others, sir. Where is the doubt? Obviously others only. Where is the doubt? Vishwarupa Upasana. You come down to Ekarupa Ishtadevata Upasana. What is that? If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, carefully follow now. Verse number 9, the first line of verse number 9 tells you, if you are not able to do verse number 8. If you are not able to do verse number 8, the second line of verse number 9 will tell you what to do. Now, verse number 10, 11 also will follow the same pattern. So, what is said as practice in verse number 9, Abhyasa Yoga, then seek to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga. If you are unable to do that, then what happens? The second line of verse number 9 will become the first line of verse number 10, as in, if you can't do that. If you can't do that. If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me means mind and intellect as said in verse number 8. If you are not able to do that, what do you do? Go back to the, if you are unable to do that, do something else. What is that? What is the abhyasa that you have to do to mature to come to the stage? The maturity to come to the stage. What is the maturity that you need? What is the spiritual practices that brings that maturity? Vishwarupa Upasana and Ishtadevata Upasana. So, what is he saying here? Ishtadevata Upasana to Vishwarupa Upasana to Ishtadevata Upasana to Vishwarupa Upasana. That Vishwarupa Upasana will gradually mature into all this is gunas, sa guna, all this is with gunas and attributes. All this maturity will take you to Nirguna Upasana. What is a Nirguna Upasana? The Nirguna Upasana is what is said in verse number 8. Arjuna asked this question. Who is superior? Nirguna worshippers or Saguna worshippers? Now, he's creating a fight between the two. Yeah, who is best? Supposing Krishna says this is best, I will start imitating that. So what is Arjuna's question in verse number 1? Who is better? Saguna worshippers or Nirguna worshippers? Nirguna worshippers are also good, but Saguna worshippers also come to me. He plays the perfect politician when he's giving answers. Arjuna is asking a very pinpointed question. Of the two, one. Of the two, who is the question? For which Krishna says both. But Arjuna, for you, I'm telling you, Saguna is the best. For you, I'm telling you, Saguna is the best. Why for Arjuna, Saguna is the best? Because Arjuna and Arjuna types. It's not only specific to Arjuna, Arjuna and Arjuna types. And most of us belong to the Arjuna type student. Most of us belong to the category of Arjuna types. Therefore, what is required? The complete spiritual practices he gave, 6 and 7. Naturally, if you have done 6 and 7 rightly, properly, naturally, where will you go? Naturally, what will you be there? You will be in the Nirguna Upasana. Verse number 8. Story over. Enlightenment has happened. After that, Om Tat Sat, we should say that and close the chapter, isn't it? But then it didn't happen. Why it didn't happen? Because that Nirguna is not possible. Then he came down to Saguna. Practice Arjuna. Seek to reach me by Abhyasa Yoga. Now, what is this me here? What does the me refers to? That's why you should always know how to interpret the me. Because he uses me in various senses. In some context, me is used as in Brahman. In some context, me is used as in Vishwarupa. In some context, me is used as in the personality, Mr. Krishna. Because for some, that is attractive. For some, the mind develops affinity to Vishwarupa. To some, the Supreme Brahman. Therefore, in verse, if you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, first me enartho before comma, there is a me. If you are unable to fix your mind steadily on me, who's that me here refers to? Vishwarupa. If you can't fix your mind steadily on me as use the sequence. If you can't fix your mind steadily on me as Nirguna, fix it on me as Vishwarupa. If you can't fix it on me as Vishwarupa, fix it on me as Ishtadevata. But that also is difficult because it is Upasana. Upasana requires what? Upasana requires shutting down all other activities and doing this. Shutting down all other activities and doing this, which is very difficult to do for a lot of people. Therefore, in verse number 10, he will say, if you can't do that, if you can't do Ishtadevata Upasana, if you can't do Vishwarupa Upasana, Nirguna is already gone. If you are not from Nirguna Upasana, if you are not able to do Saguna Upasana, as in Vishwarupa or Ishtadevata, Arjuna, don't lose heart. I have a method for you also. I have a method for you also. What is that method? That's where verse number 10, he will say that beautifully. If you are unable to do that, do something else. And then he will go on to 11. If you are unable to do 10 also, don't lose heart. And then verse number 12 is how one telescopes into the other. How they are all not isolated practices, how one telescope into the other, meaning how one takes you to the other. So what he will talk about as separate, in verse number 12, he will integrate everything together and say how one takes you to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Then Arjuna, without Arjuna asking, Krishna gives an answer. How do I know that I'm doing all these practices rightly? How do I know that I'm doing these practices rightly? How do I know that one is telescope into the other rightly, properly? Indicators. What are the indicators? Give me something to know whether I'm doing it rightly or not. Krishna says, why only one? I will give you 35 indicators, he says. 35 qualities. 35 qualities means 35 indicators that you are doing your spiritual practices properly. Here the word quality should be understood as indicators. 35 indicators by which you know whether you are doing your upasana rightly. This is how the whole chapter goes. We'll continue with verse number 10 onwards. Oh yeah, there's a clarification. We'll conclude, we'll take it up. Understand that we receive security from God. Correct. We are grateful for the same and we serve the world. Correct. But how to see divinity in crooked people? How to see divinity in crooked people, sir? Please guide. First, I'll tell you step by step. Step number 1, crooked. I am not discussing the conclusion that people are crooked. There are two ways of approaching it. One way of approaching is question the very assumption that people are crooked and develop an answer. That is one way of discussing. Another way of discussing is accept that there is something crooked. How do I see it? Now, I'm trying to explore the answer from the second angle, not from the first angle. Crooked. Yes. How do we see divinity in them? That's the question. First thing, to see divinity in them is to have a compassion towards their crookedness. They are so convinced that adharma is dharma. Are you able to follow? They are crooked because of what? They are crooked because they are convinced adharma is dharma. Ignorance needs to be taught. It is, they are acting out of ignorance. Therefore, first step is what? They are behaving in a way which is violating the dharma. That's what crooked. Crooked means those who violate the law of dharma are crooked. Why do they violate the law of dharma? Because of tamoguna. What is tamoguna? Because of tamoguna, the adharma is understood as dharma. Because having convinced adharma as dharma, what will they naturally do? What will they naturally do? They will do actions that will make them more and more adharmic. They will go into that adharmic path a lot. How to see divinity in them now? Step number 1 is to have a compassion towards them. Mentally, all this we're talking about mental attitude. We're not discussing how do we actually deal with them, because that we cannot discuss. How to deal with it, actually we cannot discuss in a classroom because it requires so many other data, which therefore we can never discuss how to deal with them actually. We are talking about how do we understand them rightly in our head. So first step is crooked because they are convinced adharma as dharma. Now, because they are convinced adharma as dharma, they will be in this manner. They will function in this manner. Because having been crooked, what will happen to them? They are going to face the consequence. What is the consequence? The consequence of agitation, frustration, etc. When they face the consequence of agitation, frustration, etc., this is how you see divinity in them. When you see them going through the consequence of agitation, frustration, etc., instead of saying, I told you so. நான் தான் அப்பவே சொன்னேனே. Instead of saying, I told you so, you say, I will help you out of this ignorance. You understand? That's how you start seeing divinity. That's how you start seeing divinity. They are doing it. They are doing it out of ignorance. At that time, you cannot do anything. They will be available only when they go through the consequences of adharma. Carefully follow. When people are being adharmic, nothing can be done. Just as when a person is angry, what can you do? You cannot do anything. You have to wait for the anger to subside down, isn't it? When you are when a person is angry, can you do anything? When the person is jealousy, can you do anything? You cannot do anything. You have to wait for it to subside down. Now, when they are adharmic, you cannot do anything. They will face the consequences of adharma. How will they face the consequences of adharma? The frustration, the pain, the misery. When they go through the pain and misery, instead of telling them that, instead of saying, yeah, I told you so, no, now you suffer. Instead of relishing their suffering, this is how you see divinity. Instead of having a joy and relishing their suffering, you say, God, what can I do to help them out? That's how you see divinity there. You follow? You see it. The formula is the crookedness of the other, the adharma of the other should not make you violent. This is the formula. Remember the formula. The crookedness of the other should not make you violent. Otherwise, what happens? The crookedness of the other makes me violent in thought, word, and deed. Number two, I will start relishing their pain subconsciously. Long back, one of the somebody did something and they went to jail for a period of time. Another person came and told me, sir, Dharma won, sir. I said, what Dharma won? Because a fellow went to jail, Dharma won. Why are you relishing that? Why are you happy about it? Are you able to follow what I'm asking? Why are you even happy about it? Yes, that person made a mistake and the law, the Dharma will take care. What should be your attitude? The crookedness of the other should not make you violent. The crookedness of the other should not make you relish their suffering. But then there is a vicarious joy we all get. Pah. Allah owns our uncle. Sonnapodi கேட்கல இல்ல. சொன்னபோது when I said they didn't listen, no. No, they have to. No, they have to. And sir, even now they will not listen, sir. Even now they will not learn, sir. The adharma of the other is making me adharmic. See, the dharma of the other is not making me dharmic, but the adharma of other very soon will make me adharmic. That's where we need inner strength. In this classroom, that's what we are trying. The dharma of other should make me dharmic. But invariably, the adharma of other makes me adharmic very fast. Inner fortification is required. That inner fortification is what very poetically called as seeing divinity in them also. It's a poetic expression, seeing divine even in the crooked, even in the wicked. Is it okay, sir? Yeah. With this, we conclude for today. We continue next week.